Hi everyone, it's time to introduce project number 2, Appropriation. In the visual arts, to appropriate means to properly adopt, borrow, recycle, or sample aspects or the entire form of man-made visual culture. Strategies include revision, interpretation, parody, homage, mimicry, supplementation, etc. Inherent in our understanding of appropriation is the concept that the new work recontextualizes whatever it borrows to create a new work. The argument can be made that all contemporary art employs the use of appropriation. So basically, appropriation means to borrow an element of visual culture. When you're appropriating something, the intention is to reference and to change the original meaning. In art history, the first example of appropriation is Marcel Duchamp's use of a ready-made urinal in his piece titled Fountain in 1917. Sherry Levine, a contemporary artist, appropriated Marcel Duchamp's fountain in her bronze urinal in 1991. Throughout her career, Levine has created art based on works by prominent male artists from the early 20th century, in order to underscore the relative absence of women in the art world at that time. When Levine's fountain is compared with Duchamp's sculpture, it is apparent that it is not an exact copy. Most notably, Duchamp's piece was an actual urinal, turned upside down and unaltered, except for his signature. He believed he could transform such mass-produced everyday objects into artworks merely by proclaiming them so and calling them ready-mades. In contrast, Levine's sculpture is a contemporary urinal cast in a sculptor's traditional precious metal, bronze. Polished to a brilliant shine, this piece is no longer a common store-bought item. It has been transformed by the artist into a unique object. In this slide, you see Yasamasa Morimura, who borrowed from Edward Manet. Morimura is a contemporary artist who uses appropriation to talk about identity, gender, and race. In the image above, he assumed the subject of the painting by applying liberal makeup and costume. The bar in this painting really did exist with a trapeze artist and all, but that is not the focus of this painting. The focus is the relationship between the man and the woman. It is said that because she has turned her wrist outward, she is also for sale. It is also said that the placement of her corsage also hints at the fact that she is a sexual object. In Morimura's piece, he becomes the bartender and the man propositioning the woman. Morimura transforms himself into half male and half female. In this example, you see an original drawing by Keith Haring on the left. In the center, you can see a piece by graffiti artist Banksy, who has appropriated the barking dog. And on the right, you see an appropriation of Banksy by Nick Stern, who places himself in photographs reenacting the graffiti. There is often a fine line between appropriation and plagiarism, and artists have been sued over it. On the left is a black and white photograph by artist Art Rogers. Jeff Koons found the photograph on a postcard and wanted to make a sculpture based on the photograph for an art show on the theme of banality of everyday items. And he made this sculpture on the right. Upon discovering that his picture had been copied, Rogers sued Koons and the gallery for copyright infringement. Koons admitted to having copied the image intentionally, but attempted to claim fair use by parody. The court found that an artist copying a photograph could be liable for infringement when there was no clear need to imitate the photograph. A similar thing happened in 2009 with the Hope poster made by artist Shepard Fairey that's pictured here on the right. The image on the left was originally taken in 2006 by a photographer for the Associated Press. When the Associated Press realized that the image had been borrowed, they announced that the use of the photo required their permission. Fairey subsequently filed a federal lawsuit against the Associated Press, seeking a judgment that his use of the AP photograph was protected by the fair use doctrine, and so did not infringe their copyright. The case was settled outside of court. The poster made by Fairey has also been appropriated, as you can see from all of these versions that I found on Google. Images are often appropriated in the media and television. Here you see the famous Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. which has been appropriated for the cover of the 2004 TV series Battlestar Galactica. And you see it again appropriated here with this zombie image that I found on Google. Likewise, the famous Nirvana album cover has been appropriated for an album cover for Weird Al Yankovic, who is a famous artist who is known for his parodies of pop music and imagery. And again, it's been parodied here on the right by The Simpsons. Sometimes it isn't just the imagery that has been appropriated, but the way something is created. Here you see an iconic woodblock print on the left, and on the right you see a woodblock print made in the Japanese tradition, but used to commemorate a Nintendo video game. And then there's Miley and cultural appropriation, which has been a big conversation as of late regarding pop culture and celebrities. Cultural appropriation is the adoption of some specific elements from one culture by a different cultural group. It can include the introduction of forms of dress or personal adornment, music and art, religion, language, or social behavior. These elements, once removed from their indigenous cultural context, can take on meaning different from those it originally held. Miley and celebrities like Gwen Stefani and Kesha have been criticized for this appropriation. In an article in Jezebel magazine, columnist Dodie Stewart said Miley and her ilk need to be reminded that the stuff they think is cool, the accoutrements that they borrow, have been birthed in an environment where people are underprivileged, undereducated, oppressed, underrepresented, disenfranchised, systematically discriminated against, and struggling in a system set up to ensure that they fail. Here you see Kesha's appropriation of Native American imagery. Shortly after Miley's twerking performance at the VMAs, this series of GIFs came out. You can see the use of appropriation of Miley's performance, plus the appropriation of these famous paintings. Here is Son of Man, The Scream, and Girl with the Pearl Earring. Now let's talk about what you will be doing for the appropriation project. Please check Canvas for the project due dates. For this project you will choose a historical ceramic vessel pre-1800, make a template of this vessel, and then using the template make 2 identical vessels. You will then choose a painting or a photograph with art historical influence post-1920. By adopting the strategy of appropriation, create a sculpture using the second vessel and elements from the 2D artwork. For the next class period, you will choose a historical vessel and upload it to Canvas. Then you will make a template of your vessel. To create a template, you should draw out the silhouette of your vessel. I would recommend an 8-inch to 10-inch height, since the project should be no taller than 12 inches total. Then, cut your drawing in half vertically. Next, cut the positive shape of the vessel away from the cardboard. You will be left with half of the negative shape of the vessel as you see in the pink shape. This is what you want your cardboard to look like. A second set of assignments will help you develop the sculptural component of the project. The due dates for these assignments can be found on Canvas. You are going to, first, find 5 examples of appropriation and write a short paragraph for each explaining how it is using appropriation. 2, you will choose 5 paintings or photos and write a short paragraph about why they are relevant to the art world. You will then choose 1 painting or photo out of these 5 and create 5 sketches of a sculpture using the second vessel and elements from the 2D artwork. We will discuss them individually in class. The requirements for this project are as follows. Sculptures must be hand-built. Projects should not exceed 12 inches unless otherwise discussed with the instructor. There must be a significant transformation of the second vessel. Projects should be finished, they should reflect good craftsmanship, and the surface treatment should be considered in the conceptual development of the piece. By significant transformation, I mean that I expect the vessel to be turned into a sculptural form. It can be cut, altered, and added to. I do not want to see the 2D artwork just decorated on the surface of the vessel. Here are some examples from previous semesters when I have assigned this project. These are the 2 source materials chosen by a student, a vessel on the left and a painting by Dali on the right. This is the finished sculpture. You can see how this student combined elements of the 2D artworks into a sculptural form. In this example, you can see how the student used the shape of the vessel and transformed it into a sculpture while still hinting at its original form. Here's another example. And here you see the same vessel utilized by another student. Here you can see how a student was influenced by this Picasso painting. And lastly, this student was influenced by a photograph of an artist. Here are some examples from previous semesters when I have assigned this project. These are the two source materials chosen by a student, a vessel on the left and a painting by Dali on the right. Here is the finished sculpture. You can see how this student combined elements of both of the 2D artworks. In this example, you can see how the student used the shape of the vessel and transformed it into a sculpture, while still hinting at its original form. Here is another example. And here you see the same vessel utilized by another student. Here you can see how a student was influenced by this Picasso painting on the left. And lastly, this student was influenced by a photograph of artist Yayoi Kusama, who is famous for her polka dot installations. I look forward to seeing what you all have come up with. Please don't hesitate to ask questions.